There are many teams and organizations who are building healthcare AI solutions today, and there are many tools and frameworks they can use to get this done. There are different types of LLM and API endpoints, different ways to integrate and ingest data into those systems, different way to build agentic workflows, build tools, build MCP endpoints, and we see this explosion in the marketplace of those tools and applications. What we still need to find and still need to close the gap on is how do we get from all those systems that enable me to build something and put it together so that there is say, a patient-facing chatbot, something that generates patient education material, prior auth, clinical scribe, and really a regulatory-grade system that can be trusted across the entire ecosystem. And what we have learned over the past few years of doing this is that there are two other parts or components that you need to have in place before and after the part that actually builds the system, which is one step before it, which is preparing your data for AI, and one step after it, which is how you actually validate and monitor the system you've built. And those are not just tools, but those are kind of just really major issues in practice. Because in general, what you probably do but don't want to do is take raw clinical data, whether it's EHR data, FHIR, notes, images, and that's the input into your system. And that creates a bunch of problems, specifically three ones which we'll talk about now: the data accuracy gap, the data engineering gap, and the data governance gap. What ideally you'd want instead is some platform or tool that just prepares your data once for AI in a regulatory grade manner. Then you do your work, you build your system, and then you need another system or platform that does governance, does validation, does monitoring, does red teaming, also in a regulatory grade auditable way, and so that you can know in a very basic way that your system works and that your system is legal. Solving the first problem, how you prepare your data for AI, is the main job of John Snow Labs nowadays. Solving the problem of how you know that your AI system works and continues working is the main job of Pacific AI. So while there are quite a few systems that enable you and platforms that enable you to build those systems, basically by connecting all of those three components together, you really get what we call the regulatory grade trust stack, which enables you to go really from raw data all the way to production real world systems. So let's talk about issues with clinical data and why more and more organizations are turning to a platform that really just prepares their data in a single way for AI. One issue that we all know and love about clinical data is what's called the data accuracy gap, which basically talks about the gap between what we know about the patients if we only use the clean structured data. That's the easiest to use. So EHR data, clinical data, warehouse data, SQL data, claims data, versus all the information that's actually known and documented about the patient if you also take into account unstructured notes, PDF reports, DICOM images, genomic data, and all the other unstructured information that we know about the patient. So there are quite a few, there are hundreds and hundreds of papers, tools, libraries, workshops that address this topic. But as a basic rule of thumb, here's what you're missing. If you're only using the structured data about a patient, only use the codes from the problem list, codes from claims, you're missing about 40% of the important diagnosis for each patient. If you're using the medication list from structured data, on average, there's going to be a discrepancy of almost 5 medications between what's listed and what the patient is actually taking. There are going to be quite a few things that are never coded or almost never coded that are only available in clinical notes. Things like tumor characteristics, social determinants of health, mental health issues, quality of life, family history, personal history. And in many cases, if you really want to have a full view of the patient, you have to solve this gap. So you need to get from the multimodal source data that you have into some unified view of the patient first. Organizations know this, And because honestly, there's no way to build a clinical trial matching tool without reading free text patient notes, right? Or analyzing tumor characteristics without reading genomic reports, pathology reports, even DICOM images, is they do the minimal amount of work that's needed for each project. And that turns out to cause a huge amount of waste and duplicative effort in the ecosystem. So here also, there's a bunch of recent papers that have tried to measure this, but regardless, this is something we see with every healthcare systems, every pharmaceutical company we work with. The implementation timelines are massive. It easily takes 1 to 2 years to just build the data pipeline that can take data from more than one source systems, combine it, transform it, make it ready for any downstream analytics, let alone AI use case. We see that when people do biomedical research, most of the time and most of the budget of grants and projects still goes to just data assembly before you get to actually analyze the data and the actual medical question you care about. Another common problem is just silent patient attrition, where you say, I'm looking for this cohort of patients, all the people who are at this stage of Alzheimer, were taking this level of medications and have this quality of life at this point. And if you only use structured data, you're going to miss up to 90% of the patients because there's information that is evidence in the data you have, but not in the nice structured coded data. In addition to the data accuracy gap and the data engineering gap, another thing that we're seeing more and more of today is the data governance gap. And if you want to do anything that's regulatory grade, it's not enough to do the work. You have to show your work and you have to explain your work. The FDA published in December 2025 final guidance on the use of real-world evidence for regulatory grade decision making. And it's good news for the industry because it means that now you're actually allowed to use real-world evidence as for primary evidence for the first time. But there were a few dozen caveats on what they expect. And putting the details aside, what they expect is very reasonable. If you want to claim based on real-world data that if you do this to this patient, you get this effect, you have to have relevant and reliable data about the patient. Okay, so please don't tell me that this is the amount of diabetics, right, or hypertensive people or smokers that you have in your data set if you only use structured data, when we all know that if you also apply information from unstructured data, that that ratio is going to triple. Okay, please don't tell me that the medication they're taking is what's actually in the codes. What you must do, whatever it is you do, you need to be able to build a complete and reliable view of each patient. That's one thing. The other thing is you have to be able to have traceability and auditability. Okay, so that if you claim that out of this trial there were 78 female patients that had this side effect after they started this line of therapy, we'd better be able to send someone and they need to go one by one for the 78 people and see back to the source data how you make this decision. And that's a requirement, which means that if you skimp on the previous step, right, you come and says, look, I'm just going to take the notes and run some LLM and get something and it's all good, then you're going to run into much bigger problem when you get to data governance. Okay, and that really becomes kind of really additional overhead in terms of the data engineering work you have to do or the manual work you need to do to show your work. So one solution to these three gaps is to just do it once and do it right. And that's what Johnson Labs is proposing here with the patient journey intelligence platform. And that's what we see across the industry more and more organizations do. Where they basically said, look, we are not going to do custom ETL every time we need to build a patient registry or have a care gap detection tool or have a revenue cycle optimization tool. We are going to take all the raw data about each patient, and you can see here at the bottom, we're starting with text, PDF, FHIR, SQL, DICOM, whatever may be the case. We are going to do the multimodal data integration. We're going to extract information. We're going to normalize it to standard codes. We are going to convert it to a OMOP, which is an open source industry standard data model. We are going to keep consistent and version clinical logic. We're going to have end-to-end provenance on what was the reasoning and what was the data provenance and tying to each specific field that we decided to infer. And we're just going to do it once, and then there are multiple applications and multiple agents that can be built on top of it. And that is essentially what Johnson Lab's patient journey intelligence platform does. And one of the things we've announced 3 months ago is that this is the first secondary use data platform that's fully aligned with those recent FDA guidance, which really involves dozens of features that make sure that if you use this platform and you build systems, you are ready for regulatory grade reviews on how we use real-world evidence. The other thing that's available is out-of-the-box AI agents, because if you've done all this work to combine all the data, update it, de-identify it, code it, you might as well also provide kind of the most commonly used and most widely used agents. So there's a patient cohort builder, so you can via chat build a cohort of patients. There's an assistant where you can chat about patients, chat about cohorts. You can match patients to clinical guidelines, do care gap analysis, or match patients to clinical trials. And this is really one of the beautiful things in the agentic AI area we live in. So clinical trial matching, for example, used to be an industry product category, right? And it would take quite a few years and quite a lot of effort to be able to be the product that does this reasonably well. Now, once you have this platform at your disposal and you've solved the data integration problem, you've solved the data engineering problem, you solved the governance problem, it literally took us a few weeks to add this functionality into the platform, where you can copy paste an ID from clinicaltrials.gov, and we just tell you which patients match, including a point-by-point explanation. The other thing you can do, which you'll see in the next keynote right here, is how you can build your own agents or your own solutions with MCP endpoints. What Johnson Labs is known for is building state-of-the-art medical language models. And this is really what enabled us to build patient journey intelligence, because the medical LLMs are literally the foundation of this platform, and that's why they make it possible to reach regulatory grade accuracy, to provide you with regulatory grade privacy, and on top of that, to give you much better cost performance than what you can get elsewhere. So let's walk through these metrics one by one. First of all, we still get asked, okay, Johnson Labs, you have models, they outperform the general frontier models, but those models keep improving, right? So Anthropic doesn't stop, Google doesn't stop, OpenAI doesn't stop. How long do you think you'll stay ahead? And our answer has been, for the past 11 years, it's actually fairly easy to stay ahead of general purpose models. What you can see here are updated numbers versus the current frontier models, so Claude Opus 4.6, OpenAI's GPT 5.4, Google Gemini 3.1 Pro, on a range of MedHelm healthcare-specific benchmarks. And of course, it's something that we have quite a few data scientists and clinicians working on, but the fundamental first principle rule of machine learning and data science still applies. Whatever your baseline model is, if you fine-tune it to a data set, fine-tune it to a task, you're going to do better. And with Johnson Labs, not only are we going to give you better accuracy, we are going to give you better accuracy with a much smaller and much more efficient model. So what we do at Johnson Labs, we do nothing as a service. So we give you the models, you install them within your own private infrastructure, and they run there. So you never send your data to Johnson Labs or to any third-party API. You get full privacy. No one will ever see your data. And to make that more efficient to run, we make sure that our models actually run on a single GPU. So not only can we beat the current general purpose frontier models, we can build them with a model that runs on a single GPU. Delivering higher accuracy is critical, but it's not enough. When you're building a regulatory grade system, you also have to worry about safety, bias, privacy, and red teaming. Otherwise, your system can end up harming patients and users. To make sure this is done right, we have Pacific AI. Pacific AI is a company whose entire job in the ecosystem is to provide healthcare-specific AI governance, validation, and monitoring. Pacific AI has three main software components. One is the governor. The governor is an enterprise-wide repository and registry for AI systems, vendors, risk assessments, model cards, and policies. It automates the process of risk assessment so that even if you're not an expert, it will read whatever documents you upload to it and basically propose a set of risks and a set of mitigating controls that comply with all of the frameworks that are in effect today in our space. The second component is the Gatekeeper. The Gatekeeper is basically an automated testing platform for Gen AI and agentic AI systems that runs more than 60 test suites, and that can happen both before you go to production and after you're in production. Before you go to production, this can be integrated as part of your CI/CD pipeline to really act as a gatekeeper, so that just like with traditional software, we have a set of unit tests and they need to pass before the software is released. We want to be at the exact same point, but when looking at all the full 360-degree view of how we evaluate our AI systems. The third critical component is the Guardian agent, which is an AI agent that monitors model performance in production, and importantly, goes beyond observability to actually perform continuous red teaming. So we don't just wait for bad things to happen. We actually continuously poke and test and attack the system under test or under monitoring, so that we learn where its rough edges are and we can act and change it before something bad happens. Here is how Pacific AI governance works in practice at Johnson Labs. First of all, Pacific AI is a CHI-certified company, so it's certified by the Coalition for Health AI. And then in turn, Johnson Labs is certified by Pacific AI. So we went through several months of getting to that point. In terms of policies, governance, mitigating controls, there are policies at Johnson Labs that are in conformance to more than 250 different federal and state laws, international laws, regulations, and different types of industry standards from NIST and ISO to the AMA and others. In terms of the actual testing, so we have adopted and used MedHelm as a repository and open source framework for running real-world clinical tasks, and this is what we do a lot of our kind of real-world evaluations on. And we've also separately developed, and you'll hear about this more in the summit, with LangTest and with the Guardian agent, a suite of healthcare-specific tests for bias, safety, reliability, and other aspects of red teaming, so that really we know that both from a general perspective, jailbreaking and such, to healthcare-specific issues like medical ethics, medical cognitive biases, we make sure that the models work as intended. So we talked about regulatory grade accuracy, we talked about regulatory grade governance, we spoke about regulatory grade privacy. Let's talk about cost and ROI. One other thing that the Johnson Labs is known for, and one thing that we're absolutely aiming for, is not just to be better, but to be better and cheaper for enterprise deployments. And here's one evaluation we did. We look to see at one use case, which is, let's say we want to actually take raw data, multimodal data, de-identify it, extract information from it, structured, unstructured data, summarize it, resolve conflicts about the patient over time, and automatically build a cancer registry. Okay, so really the use case here is cancer registry. We made some reasonable assumptions. We assumed that for each patient, we have about 1 million tokens of data. Cancer patients usually actually have more, about 2,500 pages per patient. But we took an average of 1 million because maybe you're not doing cancer, maybe you're doing chronic patients, mental health patients, whatever, complex newborns. So we assumed about 1 million token per patient. We assume the typical 4-step process, which is similar to what we see kind of in real-world deployments, and we've made some reasonable assumptions on prices, basically assuming that we do not inflate the prices of the standard APIs. So we assume that even though you need the enterprise offerings, even though you use large context windows, let's assume you get the basic pricing. And we ran the analysis of what it would take you to use Johnson Labs versus Google, OpenAI, and Claude, and the current recommended frontier models to do that work. When you use LLM APIs, you just pay for the API and you pay per token. When you use Johnson Labs, you do not pay per token, you pay an annual license for the model, for the software, which runs privately within your environment, and you also pay for the infrastructure cost. So you have to pay for the machine to run that model, right? Because you're hosting it. So what you'll see here is a comparison of Johnson Labs license plus infrastructure versus the LLM API. So it's really a fair comparison of your full cost of ownership. And while you can go into the details in this table, you can see the bottom line on the right. Even if you're only looking at 10,000 patients, a small pilot, Johnson Labs is going to be 2 times cheaper. If you're going into production, so if you're looking at 100,000 patients in this analysis, Johnson Labs is going to be 5 times cheaper. And if you're really going into production, so if you have 1 million patients that you need to process over 1 year, Johnson Labs is going to be 18 times cheaper. And we see within our customers quite a few implementations that are larger than this, even if in order of magnitude larger than this. And this is how it's designed. And the reason the price works that way is because Johnson Labs is the only provider who does not charge on a per token basis. So as you can imagine, when you charge per token, your costs go up linearly with the number of patients, with the number of tokens, because you pay for each additional token. With Johnson Labs, we do not do that. We license per node per year. So the cost grows logarithmically when you add more patients, when you add more documents. And really, this price is designed to make it reasonable and to make it economic and effective, especially for mid-size and large pharmaceuticals, healthcare systems, payers. And we strongly believe that is the right model. We do not believe you should pay literally tens of millions of dollars just to process document without any cost of actually building your use case on top of that. What it comes down to a lot of happy customers, and I'm proud to announce that Johnson Labs has just very recently been awarded by Frost & Sullivan the 2026 Customer Value Leadership Award for the Healthcare Large Language Models category. And this is important to us because this is not about technical proof points, right? And how many papers we have or even how many case studies we have. This is about customer values, customer experience, and actual ROI that people have achieved. And that's really our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we not only deliver kind of the really state-of-the-art healthcare AI to you, we also give you the best experience and the best value for your money. And we're very happy to see kind of this kind of validation, which really just reaffirms our commitment to keep working for you and giving you more of the same.